Fortunately, really non-race in Hungary, Gary. We've got both David Coulthard, Christian Klein going out first and second.
Yes, very unfortunate for both of them, and I think it is going to make a big difference at the circuit where you qualify. We've seen there was the circuit was quite dusty this morning when they went out for free practice. There has been one line that has developed. Obviously, these guys are going to go and put their Formula 1 rubber down or whatever other series may be there for the weekend. So I think you're really going to gain a lot by qualifying later on in the session. So very unfortunate for the two Red Bulls.
Well, maybe if it's the first time you're seeing this circuit in Istanbul, got a pretty healthy crowd in this afternoon for qualifying. They're expecting 130,000 people there tomorrow for the inaugural race. Vic, a spectacular circuit, we mentioned it already, and it lends itself to hopefully a really good race for tomorrow.
Yeah, I think so, especially if we watch him go around the circuit now. When he gets to turn 8, it's a very long, like a triple apex left-hander, which Alistair Gibson said it's probably the longest corner in which the Formula 1 drivers pull the maximum G-forces around this circuit.
All right, let's cross over to James Allen and Martin Brundle in Istanbul.
1950, and this is the magnificent Istanbul Speed Park. They call it the Speed Park, and I tell you, they're not kidding. The average lap speed, 139 miles an hour. That makes it the third fastest track on the Formula 1 calendar after Monza and Spa. It's very similar average speed to Silverstone. So it's right up there with the quick ones, despite those fiddly little corners at the end of the lap. And let's make no bones about it, this is an absolutely magnificent bit of track. By far the most exciting and charismatic of the new circuits designed by Herman Tilke, with significant input from Bernie Ecclestone himself. Particularly turn 1, I know Bernie is quite proud of. Some of the best corners on the Formula 1 calendar, 150 mile an hour, 7-second left-hander, a 200 mile an hour kink. David Coulthard is going to be the first man to feel this. The track is going to improve significantly over the course of the next hour by as much as a second to a second and a half. So Coulthard paying a double penalty really for going out on the first lap in Budapest.
Yeah, it's a piece of history he wouldn't want to be part of. Is the first Formula 1 driver to qualify here, pull a lot of the rubber off. But we noticed Coulthard with a very hot out lap. All of the runners here have had to choose a very hard compound to get them through the Grand Prix, and it's meaning that they're not really coming in until about lap 2 or 3, which is not very handy in single lap qualifying. He took a very cautious line in to the amazing turn 8, and you can really see him treading quite gingerly as the lap unfolds.
This is the 200 mile an hour kink I was talking about, leading down to the 60 mile an hour hairpin. There's a lot of big stops here in this new circuit. Herman Tilke seems to like them. Bahrain also is very heavy on the brakes. The reason the teams have gone for the harder tyre is because of that long turn 8, 7 seconds of full load, 4G going through there, and they were all worried that the right front tyre simply wouldn't be able to handle it unless they went relatively conservative on the tyre. Looks like Bridgestone have gone too conservative, but we'll see more about that later on as Coulthard clocks a 1:29.7.
That's very slow.
Which is very slow. It's 2 seconds.
11, Christian, turn 11.
So now they're warning him, save fuel for the race and look out for your teammate. Coulthard was warned in Hungary for going too slow, saving too much fuel on this in-lap. And he has to make sure he's out of the way of his teammate, even if he doesn't compromise his lap.
Yeah, 2 seconds slower then for Coulthard than he managed this morning. First 5 or 6 runners are the ones that really feel the pain of going out early in this style of qualifying. Here's Christian Klein. He's been struggling with finding his braking point into turn 1. I was out there this morning, tended to go quite deep into it. One of the secrets to being fast around this track, all the drivers agree, is to find your braking points into these blind apex, blind turn-in corners. Position the car correctly into them so that it comes out exactly where you want it, and that's where the speed is to be found. Also in the slower stuff towards the end of the lap. There's not an awful lot of time to be found in some of the quick corners like turn 8, but Klein immediately 0.2 quicker than David Coulthard as he comes up the hill towards this turn 8. Throwing it at over 140 miles an hour, picking up to about 150 for the third apex, running it out wide. A lot of people have been up on this apron through free practice, and surprising number of cars off track in practice.
Yeah, they've been going off in the first part, the second part. Michael Schumacher even ran wide in the fourth and final part, which appeared to be full throttle and moderately easy, but it's ripping the neck off the drivers. They're all struggling, even through free practice, to keep their head in the right position through that corner. And Klein a long way up then. Coulthard's going to end up, I think, back 16th, 17th on the grid with that first lap time of his. clean. He might just get up there 14th, something like that, at the end of this session. For now, he's going to go fastest.
Remember, he's driving for his career as well. He has this race at Monza before Tonio Liuzzi gets back in the car. A 1:28.9 for Klian is 8/10 faster than David Coulthard, and Klian needs two very strong results because the man on the left there, Tonio Liuzzi, will be in the car for, we believe, the rest of the season after Monza, and so Klian has to leave a strong impression if he's to be factoring into next year's plans.
Pity for Red Bull, because they've looked like solid top 10 contenders yet again here, haven't they, in terms of raw pace, but a lot of work to do. What you do want to be here is with an odd number on the grid, because that's the right-hand side, and I think it'll be a hungry proportions of slipperiness on the left-hand side of the grid for the even starting numbers. And it's a short run down to the first corner too.
On board with Robert Doornbos, the Dutchman from Rotterdam, who recently drove in his hometown, did a demonstration run, donuts and what have you, in the city centre in the Minardi. A huge crowd turning out to see that, over 30,000 people. The Dutch do like their Formula One, and they've got two drivers in this Minardi team. It's 2-0 to teammate Christian Albers at the moment, as Doornbos makes a little mistake there into turn 7. But Doornbos has been the quicker of the two Minardi drivers throughout free practice. This is 8 on board.
It's all done in one short of top gear, depending whether you've got 6 or 7 speed gearbox. It's unbelievable when you stand there. It looks such a tight corner. They're taking it, most of them, in 6th gear down to turn 9. It's very wide as they try to create an overtaking place, but I think it'll be too dirty on the inside to make anything work particularly well there. And then the quick right-hander at the back of the pit. That is really a nothing for the driver, despite it being a couple of 100 miles an hour. He's 6 seconds down on Klian. How can that be?
Well, we've seen a few lockups. The car clearly isn't enjoying this ride on this lap. We've seen it also with Doornbos as well in the last couple of Grand Prix. He's looked very strong through free practice, and in fact he's ditched this lap. He's coming into the pits, as you can see, so he's not even going to complete the lap. And that's why is that dust, or is that a lot of smoke coming out of the engine?
It's a lot of smoke.
Was it brake?
Something on the right rear has gone. His right rear, both his brakes are on fire, almost as if they haven't taken the blanking off his. It's like his rear brake ducts are just absolutely not functioning at all, because the rears take a lot less energy than the front brakes. So quite clearly, fundamentally, either they're not on there or they're blocked up.
Well, here's Juan Pablo Montoya starting his lap. Ted Kravitz, what can you tell us?
Yeah, I'm just going to go and find out what's happening with the Minardi brakes. The guys have got it under control, but Montoya has had to keep putting on front downforce onto this McLaren to get round the understeer because of these hard tyres. But they said to me that if they had the option, they would have started him on scrubbed tyres. Such is the problem with these hard tyres, but of course the rules say you can't do that.
So Montoya, McLaren definitely the team to beat here this weekend. They've been fastest throughout the practice sessions, and they look remarkably quick. Teammate Kimi Raikkonen will go out last, which is a big advantage to him. They've also had Pedro de la Rosa running around making tyre choices and helping with setup on the Friday as well. So all the cards seem to be falling into place for McLaren here this weekend. And remember, Raikkonen managed to win the race in Hungary, having gone out early, in fact first in qualifying, so it can be done. Montoya has to do it as well, but his nerves seem to have crept in since that mistake at Hockenheim 2 races ago. He had a disappointing qualifying in Budapest. He needs a strong one here today.
Yes, he went off on a hot lap attempt this morning in free practice, went off on his in lap at the very end of the practice session, and quite clearly could have and should have won in Hungary. Was it because he tripped over that generator on the line that caused the problem with his drive shaft? Whatever, it's put him early running, and you can see the smoke on the left from the Minardi rear brakes as they're putting the fire out. Montoya with a 27.3. I would have expected something more in the 126s, so still quite a high penalty for the early runners, but at least for McLaren that keeps Montoya out of the way of Raikkonen, doesn't it? Because you have to say Montoya's looked as if he's just had the edge in terms of absolute raw pace right up until the final part of free practice, but then, as you say, Montoya got all scruffy and started making mistakes. But that could well be good news for Alonso. Alonso has just got to finish 3rd all the way to the end of the season to take the championship. Doesn't care if both McLarens are in front of him, but the man who might spoil that party for him later on is Jenson Button. He's going very well around here, but at the moment I think that time of Montoya will compromise his...
Rediscovered his speed, and Peter Sauber, for one, is happy about that. Whether or not it's enough for BMW to decide to keep him on for next year, Villeneuve, whoa, he's off track, lost a bit of time, he's struggling to hold on to this, and not surprisingly, 150 miles an hour through there, and that will not impress BMW too much.
The green flag waving behind to say track is clear, but that is a bit behind him. That's amusing. But yeah, what Jacques should have done there is what everybody else has appeared to be doing, is just realise he's going off the road and just carried on through that green space there, back across the greengrocer's carpet. That's the final bit of that they put their fruit on. It's that sort of they should have just carried on down the green piece and gone out through the artificial turf at the end, but he wanted to come back on. Of course, they've red flagged it because he's parked right in the middle of the racetrack. That compromises whoever is out, which is Alba's, compromises him because he's already in his outlap. Jacques has lost some aerodynamic pieces in there too, or was that turf flying through the air, or bits of carbon fibre, but for sure some of the strakes underneath the car will have been damaged. So work to do for Sauber, and he will be towards the back of the grid.
Well, irony of ironies. Villeneuve yesterday saying, I believe turn 8 is the best corner in Formula 1. That's a big statement, and today it's really bitten him. Montoya's fastest at the moment. Qualifying for the first ever Turkish Grand Prix at the Istanbul Speed Park, about 35 miles outside the centre of downtown Istanbul. There is Fernando Alonso, the World Championship leader. He's getting a message from Rod Nelson, his race engineer, keeping him abreast. There he is, Rod Nelson on the right, of what's going on. What is going on is that Montoya is fastest ahead of Klein and Coulthard. That's Robert Dornbos, whose rear brakes caught fire. And Minardi boss Paul Stoddart is right now with Ted Kravitz.
Yes, indeed, down here on the Minardi pit wall. Paul, it was fairly dramatic, wasn't it? When did the brake problems start?
It was a bit spectacular, Ted. On the lap, we heard from Robert to say that he had a brake problem. We let him continue the first 2 sectors, so we could see that he was really struggling. We called him in, but as you've seen, it erupted into a ball of flames on the way into the pit lane. Simple problem, rear pressure. Suddenly, obviously, the blockage has gone away. He's locked the brakes. That's created incredible temperature, followed by the fire. But we'll get it back and investigate exactly what it was. Be sorted for tomorrow.
Okay for the race. So was he actually driving around with completely locked rear brakes?
Well, no, it was initially had no rear brakes, so there was a blockage. Then all of a sudden the blockage cleared, and it went from no rear brakes to locked rear brakes. But luckily that happened in the entrance to the pit lane. So it's a crazy problem, not one we've seen before, but we'll sort it for tomorrow.
Okay, thanks very much, Paul.
Yes, it's a hydraulic problem then, rather than a cooling problem as such, in that the hydraulics have pushed the rear brakes on, and then it's not just like putting your handbrake on and then just leaving it on at a couple of 100 miles an hour, and then inevitably they get too hot and overheat. No amount of cooling will fix that problem. Louise has found Juan Pablo Montoya.
Juan Pablo, frustrating situation for you. Your car is clearly very, very quick, but you've got such an early slot for qualifying. How much do you think that's going to compromise you?
Probably 5 or 6 places in the grid at least. You know, it depends what everybody else does, how the track behaves to everybody else. But, you know, against Kimi, it's going to be probably at least 6, 7 tenths.
And what about against everybody else, against the likes of Alonso and even Jenson Button?
Well, we'll see. You know, we'll see when they come out what happens, what the car does and everything. But, you know, it's tough. You know, I'm happy I got a good race car, but, you know, you go out, you do your best, and you're only a lap, you know, 6, 7 tenths slower than practice on your tires. That's quite frustrating.
He's been there before though, hasn't he, Martin? Quite a few times this year, and he's recovered from it quite well several times as well. You'd have to say Montoya now is really coming into his own. He's been chasing Kimi Raikkonen for the last few Grand Prix. He certainly should have won in Hungary if he hadn't had the drive shaft failure. And Montoya really fully up to speed, and that's good news for McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. Just 12 points behind Renault, for whom Giancarlo Fisichella is having a bit of a thin time of it this season, and clearly the McLaren the faster car, so it's all to play for in the Constructors' Championship. Drivers' Championship, slightly different story, but as we saw in the last couple of Grand Prix, fortunes can change pretty quickly. So out on track is Christian Albers, teammate to Robert Dornbos. As I mentioned before, he's out-qualified him twice so far, and with Dornbos's rear brakes catching fire, that should make it 3 to Albers, unless he drops off the track. We've also seen Jacques Villeneuve in trouble as well. He flew off the road in turn 8 and has set no time, as Albers is on his warm-up lap at the moment.
Yes, it was a one-off problem with the other Minardi. I would feel sure maybe they've had the back end off the car, and often then you break the joint of the brake system and have to re-bleed it. So that sounds like where the gremlin crept in. So I'd be surprised if Albers had exactly the same problem, but he's got an uphill struggle to get any kind of reasonable lap time out of it. I think in terms of the tyres are hard, he doesn't have as much downforce as some of the cars out there, and he'll be wrestling it for the first few corners.
I know what those of you at home thinking that follow Formula One closely, that first corner doesn't half look like the first corner at Interlagos in Brazil, the famous Senna S, and certainly it does to us as well when you stand next to it. It's quite similar. The drivers, though, say it bears no resemblance when you're actually behind the wheel. It's quite different. The cambers are different. The feel of it is different. The way you go into it as well. The drop is more significant turning into the apex of the corner. But certainly Bernie Ecclestone, when he was working with Tilke and roughing out the tracks, he wanted something quite similar to their Interlagos S.
Yeah, it's amusing. I mean, Tilke's now done so many racetracks that he's absolutely really getting them hooked up, no doubt about it. But neither Herman nor Bernie have ever driven a Formula One car. But it's interesting that they're the two guys that were penciling in the layout.
Albers taking a slightly different line to some of these corners from other drivers we've seen, hugging the line much more tightly through turn 8, and also going into turn 9 in a slightly different trajectory as well. That's the fast kink I was talking about, 200 miles an hour for the fastest cars. Here's the speed trap down here as well into this corner. Albers is certainly working the wheel hard, as he has all season. Impressed quite a lot of people this year, just kicking a little bit of dust out on the final corner. Nevertheless, 4.8 seconds off the pace of Juan Montoya, so that'll be over 5 off the pace, I think, when the final runners have been through. Kimi Raikkonen, we're expected to set a time somewhere in the mid to low 1:26s.
It's almost as if they're running almost a one stop, isn't it? They've filled them right up. That kind of lap time would suggest they've just put as much fuel in as they think they can get away with. But it's amazing that they can be that much slower per lap. Massa on track and cascading down into turn 1, where they all seem to just run out of track on the outside of the corner, but 2 is easy and full throttle.
So a Ferrari driver confirmed for 2006, Felipe Massa. What a tremendous opportunity for the young Brazilian. Does he deserve it? Well, he's certainly one of the young guys with who looks promising. Ferrari have had him under contract since 2001 as a tester, and he will be doing 2 days testing next week at Monza in a Ferrari, then jumping into a Sauber on the Friday, which will be a little bit confusing for him, and Michelin aren't very happy about it either. They feel that he's going to take valuable Michelin data over to Bridgestone at a crucial time of the season. We ride through 8 though with Felipe Massa. No shortage of bravery with this young man, and he does something that his teammate couldn't do, and that's cleanly exit 8.
Yeah, they've got such different interpretations amongst the drivers on how to get through that quadruple apex turn 8, and Massa wasn't even flat out in the third part of it, but nonetheless, as you say, at least he came out the other side with everything pointing in the right direction, and a solid middle sector for Felipe Massa, but of course nowhere near Montoya's time in the McLaren, which is comfortably now the fastest car on the racetrack.
Yep, certainly is. Well, Sauber a little bit more competitive here this weekend than they expected to be. Massa 10th fastest this morning in free practice. If he could replicate that here this afternoon, it will be quite something. He slots himself in second, in front of the Red Bulls who went out first, but just a second behind Juan Montoya, and I think he'll be reasonably pleased with that time, 28.4. It's 0.6 slower than he managed this morning, which is consistent with what Montoya did, 0.6 slower than he was this morning. Here's the Jordan of Thiago Monteiro. We probably won't see much of Carter Kayan. He's had an engine change, so he probably won't set a flying lap because of that. But Monteiro struggling a bit with toothache this weekend. Only man to have gone the distance in all the Grand Prix this season, which is remarkable for a rookie, so plenty of experience for him. And he'll be looking forward to getting his hands on the new Jordan, which is finally going to make its debut, I understand, at Monza in a couple of weeks' time.
Yep, let's hope that one works out well. I wonder if they're 2 or 3 stopping these cars for fuel. There's not a lot in it, and it's a very quick in to the pit lane because you missed the last corner, and it's a quick out because you missed the first corner. But I think overall it's nip and tuck as to whether they should 2 or 3 stop with the fuel load. But what they're all worried about is they've been driven to use much harder tyres than they would normally like to do here, which gives them horrible problems after each pit stop, where it can take some 7 or 8 laps sometimes to get the pressures and temperatures back up to full operating range. So some difficult problems. More than just getting these cars round and keeping them on this rather challenging racetrack is how to fill them up and how to set them up for the Grand Prix.
Well, Monteiro is on the Bridgestone tyre. He's the first car we've seen today using this specification of Bridgestone tyre. The Minardis use a slightly different one. And certainly when it comes to the Ferraris later on, if you remember, they were talking about a new family of compounds that they discovered, which made Ferrari particularly competitive in the last couple of Grand Prix. They aren't able to use those here this weekend. They're worried about that long turn 8 as Monteiro goes across the line 5th in a 1:30.7, and that means they've had to go back to the generation of tyres they were using around Magny-Cours and Silverstone time, which just don't give good single lap performance. So that'll hamstring the Ferraris here this afternoon, but really none of the Bridgestone teams looking particularly clever around this racetrack at the moment.
You've got plenty of time, more than 30 seconds to Narain at the moment.
We are going to see Narain Carter-Kayan. Whether we see him setting a lap, there he is. Indeed, he goes straight into the pit lane as we expected, which is pretty standard practice when you've had an engine change.
It's 2 engine changes now, isn't it, for him? I believe it's the second time they're changing an engine. Unusual because obviously the Toyota team themselves, who supply the engine, have had very few problems. So it's usually then a question of installation or oil systems or cooling systems or whatever with the different chassis. But Carter-Kayan, obviously, it won't take 2 lots of 10 place drops. And Louise has found David Coulthard.
Okay. Well, David, you're the first man ever to do a qualifying lap for the Turkish Grand Prix. How was it?
Not wonderful. I got a little bit wide in 8. and likewise a 9 because of the dust they had on the tyres from there, so dropped quite a bit of time in that part of the sector. Otherwise, fairly uneventful lap.
Track seems to be generally getting the thumbs up from all of the drivers. Is that what you feel about it?
Yeah, no, it's a very challenging track. The only difficult thing, well, there's lots of difficult corners, but the really tricky thing is the amount of bumps, which obviously when the car unloads over those, it makes it quite interesting.
Raikkonen parked in the middle of the pit lane, and some stewards just coming along to move him out of the way. His garage is right down the other end of the pit lane. Out onto the racetrack comes Alonso, and the Jordan team do seem to have got through quite a lot of engines. They seem to have a lot of engine changes going through pre-practice going into the race. If you think back over the last few Grand Prix, I know they've had some problems with the air valve system on that engine. As you say, it's strange that the Works team don't seem to have that problem. Ted Kravitz, what can you tell us?
Well, you're absolutely right. The first Kartikeyan engine failure was a failure in that pneumatic air valve system, and that chalks up the fourth such failure for Jordan. They're convinced in some way that the engine is integrated within the chassis. Of course, it was a very late deal to have the Toyota engine, so there's something not quite right in the engine chassis integration there. But just down at Renault, as Fernando Alonso's on his outlap, a very late hydraulic scare for Giancarlo Fisichella. They're pretty sure they've identified the problem and fixed it, but Fisi's only just got into the car and he's not looking particularly settled.
We caught a radio transmission from Alonso this morning that really surprised me. He was in free practice, he said, I'm going to just do 2 laps in this final part. It may cost us time. I want to save the engine. Let's be more secure with the engine. And he was driving the program, which is fair enough, but also just showed to me his mentality is a defensive mentality. And despite really relatively cruising in Hungary with the first race on this engine, he's worried. He's definitely feeling, I've got to go conservative.
Yeah, this is the second race on the engine for Alonso. As you say, he did say yesterday he switched it right down on the revs during the race in Hungary after he had that accident with Ralf Schumacher at the start, knowing he wasn't going to get much out of the weekend. But even so, it does show the way he's thinking. And really, he's been leading the World Championship for such a long time now. It's been a defensive program with the advance of Raikkonen. Here we are on board then with the World Championship leader, 26 points clear of Kimi Raikkonen. Not a man really for percentage driving, but in qualifying terms, he's of late, he's not been as excellent as he was in the middle part of the season.
He's got to get this car ahead of Montoya's McLaren. Alonso takes normally a wide run out, yes, there again for part 3, and he gets a better, easier viewing of part 4 of that turn 8. Braking about 95 metres down into 9. Don't run too wide because it compromises you in 10 on the top of the hill. Don't run wide there either, you get dirty tyres. Sweeping now through turn 11 then, and he's 4/10 up. That's critical. I think it confirms Montoya had a difficult lap on an early run. But Alonso, there's still problems at the end of the lap. But he's gone a little bit wide there, but he's tended to be the fastest man. You've got to be careful to not clip this very final curb, otherwise it pushes the car too far to the outside. He rode it quite nicely. The line comes up quickly. Alonso does stay ahead despite that tiny slip in turn 12, does stay ahead of Montoya, and I think that is critical for him to keep Raikkonen in sight this weekend.
Remember, throttle 10 and it's a TV brake. Throttle 10 and it's a TV brake. You're on pole 27.0, Montoya 27.3.
So Fernando Alonso fastest ahead of Montoya and Massa at the moment. Qualifying for tomorrow's first ever Turkish Grand Prix at Istanbul Speed Park, the anti-clockwise 3.31 mile circuit, recently built, recently completed. 14 corners, over 200 miles an hour, the maximum speed at several points on the track. 139 miles an hour, the average speed. The drivers are all loving it, except Jacques Villeneuve, who's gone off the road on his qualifying attempt and set no time. Robert Dornbos in the Minardi had a fire in his rear brakes, and he too has set no time. At the moment, Fernando Alonso is on target for his 8th career pole position, his 5th of the season, ahead of Montoya, Massa, Klein and Coulthard. Rubens Barrichello in the Ferrari goes out to start his lap, and to my mind, Martin, there's really only 2 or 3 men that could take that pole away from Alonso now. They're Raikkonen and particularly Jenson Button worth watching out for. Yeah, when Barrichello clicked his visor down to head out onto the racetrack, it would not be relishing the next few miles ahead of him, because this Ferrari on those tyres is simply not hooked up around here. Rubens seems to have been off the road more than he's been on it through certain parts of free practice. They're really struggling to find the grip. They do have a habit of somehow hooking something up, don't they? Just when it matters towards the end of the, in qualifying itself. But really, Ferrari all at sea this weekend. Well, as I mentioned earlier on, they've not been able to bring the Hockenheim and Hungary softer, different compound of Bridgestone tyre here. They're worried about the durability over all these laps going through that long left-hander, so they've gone back to the tyres they used in France and Silverstone. They just don't offer the grip on a single lap. They're just too hard. And Barrichello, in the slow corners, the back of the car has been sliding out. In the fast corners, both Barrichello and Michael Schumacher having to get out of the throttle in the middle of the quicker corners. There's no point in trying to chase the speed if it simply isn't there. And Barrichello, you can see, is not on target to get anywhere near the front runners. This racetrack's a living thing. It's moving as it's so new. The surface is so new, but we're seeing bumps that are developing. No problem with that. Challenges the cars and the drivers, and quite clearly the surface is changing in terms of the grip that it's giving up. But whatever, Barrichello on a 29.3 between the 2 Red Bulls who ran really early in the session. That's a horrendous time. It is. What's it all down to? Well, I can tell you that the track has certainly improved in terms of speed since the start. The first...
we've got a bit of a headwind here on the pit straight, so into turn 12 you're going to have a bit of a tailwind. Fernando got a bit caught out by a brake too late and lost a bit of time there, so just be a little bit careful there.
A bit of a wind, 3.7 metres per second. It's just crept up recently.
Yeah, that's a delayed transmission there. They wouldn't be telling him that as he came into the pit straight. What they're trying to tell him is if you've got a tailwind, then you have to brake 2-3 metres earlier, and just giving Fisichella that heads up from Alan Permain there, but that would have been significantly earlier in the lap. I was surprised Fisichella wasn't pushing a bit harder on that outlap. He appeared to be coasting a little more than some, but he's been somewhere near Alonso, hasn't he, in terms of absolute pace around it. He seems reasonably happy. We'll find out shortly just how fast he can go. It's a fraction down then. What Renault do not need is Fisichella in front of Alonso. What they do need is him right up there as his rear gunner.
They certainly need him to score some points. He's only 8th in the World Championship. He's only had 5 points finishes apart from that win in Australia, and since Melbourne he hasn't even been up on the podium. If you think about what Alonso's been doing in the same car, it's not all Fisichella's fault. He's had a terrible run of poor reliability, but they do need him to start scoring some big points now to keep McLaren at bay.
Some talk that he may be replaced for next year by Mark Webber, which was scuppered by Webber himself. Then that they may put Kovalainen in from GP2, but I don't think that's the case either. Kovalainen will become the 3rd driver. And I have to say, I think that Barrichello may well be penalised for that, getting in the line of sight there for Fisichella. Line coming up, where has he achieved? And it is a fraction ahead of Alonso, a 27 flat in the same way, but a few thousandths faster. Good effort from Fisichella, and Alonso will be sinking down in his chair at that one.
Just go in front of Fernando. Well done. You'll be one at the moment.
Well done indeed, Giancarlo Fisichella. He kept his head together. Nice, neat, tidy lap, and so maybe the list of people that could take the pole away from Alonso is a little longer than I imagined it would be. Certainly we're interested to see what Button can do in a few cars' time, and also Kimi Raikkonen as well. Here's Takuma Sato. Now both BARs have been working well. Sato, the more aggressive driver, the more punchy on the throttle, the more jagged on the steering. and it seems that the button method of smoothness and fluidity is the faster way around here in this car. Sato giving away 7 or 8 tenths of a second to Button in free practice, but let's see if he can gather it all up together on his qualifying lap. 2 tenths down on Fisichella at the moment.
Takuma obviously hoping to be, oh, he's running off, badly off, hit the ground hard. The energy unloads into the ground through the chassis instead of through the tyres, and he's carrying on to try and give himself some kind of lap time in case others do a similar thing. But that's going to put him back at least 15th on the grid now at the end of this session, so a bad mistake from Sato, the last thing he needed.
When you're in a position like that, you know that almost certainly your driver's gone if Barrichello's coming to the team and Jenson Button is going to stay. And you think, well, I'll drive to sort of get myself a drive for someone else, and then, or even to stay here if I can, but then you get that awful sinking feeling when you make a mistake like that, I imagine. He must just be feeling sick to his stomach.
It's so much easier to make mistakes when you're under pressure like that. Every little move of the car, instead of you just sweeping it up, he gets himself ahead of the Jordans and Minardis, and of course Villeneuve, who didn't do a lap time. Here we go. First part looks okay. Beginning to understeer wide now. A similar thing really to Villeneuve, except that Sato did keep it longer on the outside of the corner. And it's, again, just as if he didn't recognise quite early enough, like Jacques Villeneuve, that, hey, this is going wrong. But it's quite dirty high up there, and he just got on those marbles and off he went. Webber's been quite fast for Williams, been going nicely around here, hasn't he?
Certainly has, Mark Webber, 7th this morning in free practice. Williams a lot more optimistic of late, confirmation that they're going to go to the Cosworth engine next year, which rumour has it, coming out of Northampton, is quite a meaty unit. They know a bit about V8 engines from their history, and they think they can spring a few surprises next year, even though it is a customer engine with no manufacturer funding. They believe that they will show a few people up next year, and certainly Williams seemed quite bullish going into the winter. Just over a tenth slower Webber is than Fisichella, and he has been fantastic in single lap qualifying throughout his career as Mark Webber. Doesn't make the same mistake as Sato and Villeneuve. Manages to get himself nicely on the exit. He's going to encounter Sato. No, come on, surely this isn't right. It's not right. That's hopeless. Oh, that's awful.
That's ridiculous. First of all, Sato shouldn't have been anywhere near there. Secondly, his team should have been telling him to get out of the way. Totally compromised Webber's lap. He's still only half a second adrift, but he had to take a complete car width offline into a difficult braking zone. And it looks like he's kept his head with it. I tell you what, he only just held on to it in turn 8 as well. Good stuff.
If that was me, I'd be saying, let me have another go, please. That's not fair. You know, I've been compromised in a way that the others have not been. There'll be a bit of a Aussie language going on in that helmet. Just under a second then, slower than Fisichella, but he was definitely compromised in...
P4 at the moment, P4. What does Sato do in the fast side? Yeah, we know, Mark, we know.
Had a feeling we might get some right language there. I mean, he managed to keep that emotion in till after the lap had finished, because that was outrageous. There's only 2 cars on the racetrack, for goodness sake, and one of them's coming into the pits.
You have to say, I like Takuma Sato very much. He's a great guy, but there's a certain haplessness about him that we saw in Melbourne when he got a radio message from Jock Clear saying, be careful, it's wet, and he said, it's too late, Jock, as he'd smashed it into the wall. And here again, you know, just in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's just not really worked out for Takuma Sato as a frontline Formula One driver, and that's a great shame, because he's a terrific talent and a lovely guy, but he just doesn't seem to happen, does it? Anyway, he's compromised Mark Webber. Heidfeld going off the racetrack there to get himself a nice big turn in into 7, using all the track and then more. This is the one that's been catching him out then, and you can see why. What a complex corner that looks from above. And when you stand next to the track and watch them from behind going into it, it's absolutely awesome. Reminds me a little bit of my days in America watching the 1 mile ovals, the way that they commit the car to the corner, but it's so complicated in terms of where to actually pick your point for steering for the apexes. So, what can Heidfeld do? His teammate's been compromised by a back marker, and he has been a little bit quicker than Webber in the middle sector, unsurprisingly. So he's got to check. Can he spoil Montoya's day? Montoya at the moment is getting away with that early run. Not that well, but he could certainly do with the 2 Williams behind him. One already is, and it's a question of whether Heidfeld can get him. So no, he can't
In fact, he's only just got himself a fraction in front of Mark Webber, despite Webber's problems. So Montoya breathes again in P3.
Well, Heidfeld, whenever they've finished together, he's always finished in front of Webber on the racetrack. And on 2 of those occasions, he's qualified behind him. So Heidfeld's certainly the stronger racer this season than Webber. But Ted Kravitz is down in the Williams garage. What's the atmosphere like there after Sato's misdemeanor?
Yeah, well, you can imagine. You know Patrick Head very well. And quietly, very quietly, he was doing his nut. He was storming. He was watching it with Frank Williams round at where Frank watches on the bank of monitors, and stormed into the garage, face as black as you like, but keeping a lid on it, which is more than you can say for Mark Webber. But it's very strange that, because down at BAR, Jock Clear normally does talk to Kuma Sato round the lap. He says, okay, the next driver is at turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. So a breakdown in communication somewhere, but for sure Sato will lose his qualifying lap for that.
Well, they can take money off him. He's already paid some money for speeding in the pit lane. They can put him further back on the grid, but he's already a long way back on the grid anyway. Maybe they'll penalise him for the next event. And there you're seeing it. And Sato realises just at the last moment. And Louise has found him to explain what was going on.
Takuma, tell us what happened there with Mark.
I didn't have update on the radio and information, maybe some problem. So I really didn't see. By the time I realized was just down the straight, so very sorry for that.
I just saw you in the back of the FIA garage where we're standing at the moment with the headset on, presumably talking to your team. What were they saying to you? Yeah, so basically we just radio communication to the balance for the Jensen for the next run, and basically talked about in-lap situation. I understand we're just hearing that the incident is under investigation, so presumably this means that you're going to face a trip up to see the stewards. What are you going to say to them? No, really, I tell them what the truth is and what I felt. So, the qualifying lap wasn't so good. It's a bit difficult day. Thanks, Tenku.
Well, what he's saying is it's the team's fault.
Yes,
is what I was understanding him to say there.
They should have told me that Webber was that close to me and where he was. And to be fair, it is impossible for him to know exactly where the next car is. They do need to let him know to within a few metres of him.
Apart from those 2 little shiny things they put beside the cockpit called mirrors.
Yeah, indeed, absolutely. Well, you could see him because he went straight on into the corner. He must have gone right round the escape road to get out of Mark Webber's way. He tried to get out of his way, but he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. There's another man who's must be feeling he's in the wrong place at the wrong time. After all these World Championships, it's not happening for him again this weekend. Michael Schumacher will be seeing him shortly. Here's a man, though, who could spring a surprise. Jenson Button on his warm-up lap. There's his father, John, recently celebrated his 62nd birthday. Doesn't look a day under 70, in my opinion, but he's watching Jenson, and I think on this occasion he'll be feeling that Jenson could again get himself up on the front row of the grid. Whether he can take pole will be a different matter. It will be his 2nd of the season if he could, 3rd career. But it's just all been going right for Jenson this weekend. Very, very smooth. The car is working beautifully. The rear wheels are following the front wheels round the corners in a way that you dream of. Has he got the raw pace to take on the McLarens on a single lap, particularly if they run a little bit more fuel, as they are wont to do, and he runs a little bit less? He's got the pace in the race. He knows that as well to challenge Renault. It's an optimistic Jenson Button then, who launches into turn 1 for his qualifying lap.
That Honda donkey sounds glorious, doesn't it? It's revving so highly and freely as he pops over the top of the crest into turn 3. Then 4 is straight in front of him, so you have to really balance the car and just pitch it in nicely. It'll accelerate very quickly down the hill. The first part again is a balancing act before nailing it through the easy 5, down and 6, down the bottom of the hill. Then you can brake slightly later. You've got the assistance of the hill to help you slow the car and turn it in, and he's a fraction up on Fisichella. This is exactly what we expected. Now, how's he going to take turn 8? In nice and early. Will he let it run high? Or he just had to give it a quick correction and it's okay. Oh no! And he's got out of shape into 4th part. What is that about? He lost it in the easier part of turn 8. That is the glorious thing about that corner. It is challenging the best drivers in the world, and they can't consistently get it right. Then he outbraked himself in turn 9 as well, for good measure. He's way off the pace at this time. disaster for Jenson Button.
Oh, and for the BAR Honda team as well, with Takuma Sato likely to lose his qualifying time. It was not a great time anyway. And they've been really competitive here this weekend. They looked like they were good for certainly top 6 with both cars, instead of which Sato's going to be at the back and Button is going to be, well, 10th at the moment with still a few cars to come. He will be kicking himself for that mistake.
It's so unlike Jenson, isn't it? He had to give it a little bit of a correction in the third part, and it's hitting the ground hard. And then it just got a little bit out of shape, and he couldn't just scoop it up. There he is, look. And it got a bit of a tank slapper in the final part. He just caught the inside of the corner. And, well, as he was balancing all the forces, it just started eating its way, didn't it, to the outside of the racetrack.
So all the fun has been at turn 8 here, as we predicted. All the drivers finding it quite a handful, and some of the top drivers as well, including Jenson Button. 150 miles an hour, that was all happening at for Jenson. Here's Jarno Trulli, who's, well, you'd put him, he's like Fort Knox when it comes to qualifying laps. As secure as they get, and usually as quick as they get. And look at this, 8/100ths of a second slower than Fisichella as he heads his Toyota into 8th.
Yeah, he's the one of the, well, probably the only driver who's not saying, yeah, this is a magnificent racetrack, isn't it? Trulli really hasn't sort of been that enthusiastic about it. It hasn't appeared to be that fast, although it's pretty tidy so far.
Yeah, Toyota solidly on the outskirts of the top 10 throughout practice this morning, although Ricardo Zonta was very quick, the third driver yesterday and Friday. Once again, it's just 8/100ths of a second that Trulli is behind Fisichella. He's going to encounter Jenson Button if he's not careful. In this final part of the lap, I think Button will just be able to dive into the pit lane and get out of his way. This is going to be very close then between Jarno Trulli and Giancarlo Fisichella for provisional pole. 1:27.039 Fisichella. Trulli a 1:27.5, lost a little bit in those final 2 corners. Just as Mark Blundell was saying in the build-up to the show, you can do. You get it wrong in those last 2, you can lose a lot of time.
RPM 12, we are P4, you're just behind Montoya. Ralph is 45 seconds behind you, so you can take it easy.
Yes, his teammate now that's running next, but so the team will be ever so keen to make sure he's fully updated on where the other driver is. But another sigh of relief then for Montoya, who stays third, and a replay of Button, who then gets to the bottom of the hill. Hopefully there's not too much damage. Look, he has a little correction in the second part, and then, the third part. And the fourth part, just as he touched the curb on the inside, which he has been doing all day, it was just a fraction too much. Put it out of balance, as he had to counter steer, ran out of road.
Ralf Schumacher in the Toyota, 8th fastest this morning, did a 1:27.5. If he can do that again now, it'll put him right there with his teammate Jarno Trulli, around about 4th or 5th place on the grid at the moment, with only 2 more cars to come, one of which is his brother, who's struggling in the Ferrari. So Ralf Schumacher has a good opportunity to give himself a platform here this weekend. Toyota coming here, of course, off the back of that magnificent result in Hungary, where Ralf got his first podium for the team. He's got a bit of momentum behind him at the moment, Martin, and he's just a 10th down on Fisichella.
Yep. 3 runners then. Ralf getting through the gristly bit of that corner. Seems to be the key. You've got to just give a little on the way in. Otherwise you spend the rest of the corner fighting it, sometimes surviving and sometimes not. 2 wide in 9. Now he's going to be ever so wide in 10. Dirty tyres and second drifting away. They're going off all over the place.
Well, Herman Tilke said he designed this racetrack to catch the drivers out, to give them something to think about, to make them make mistakes. And boy, have we seen that here this afternoon. The big names in Formula One struggling to master, to conquer this amazing 3.3 mile Istanbul racetrack. Final couple of corners for Ralf Schumacher. He'll have lost time there going wide into 9, will Ralf Schumacher. And look, that's how much time he lost. A full second to teammate Jarno Trulli. He was on his sort of pace, and that's what it cost him.
Kind of sums up his season, doesn't it, really? It looked all right into 9, but he just ended up just drifting wide, like he braked a fraction too late. And tyres dirty, they'll struggle to turn for 10, and that's where the 1.1 seconds went. Here's an on-board view of it. Looked pretty harmless, didn't it? I think he'll be somewhat surprised by, well, hang on, where's the front end going? Michael Schumacher now to wrestle the second of the Ferraris.
Absolutely magnificent in qualifying for the last 2 Grand Prix. When you make the fuel adjustment after the Grand Prix and you figure out what lap they stopped on, figure out how much fuel they were carrying in qualifying, you realise that Schumacher was absolutely huge in Hockenheim and in Budapest. But here this weekend he's had to go back to the old spec Bridgestone tyre, and well, the car just isn't enjoying it, as it didn't throughout the early summer months. What can the great maestro do? Where can he put himself in this field of people who've made mistakes, others who've managed to get it round, and others who have done a pretty good job, like Giancarlo Fisichella, currently sitting top of the pile?
Yeah, he's still every bit as good as Alonso and Raikkonen, there is no doubt about that. He's just struggling this season with the package that he's got. He's just a quarter of a second adrift then at the very long first sector of over half a minute. That's good news for Michael. Turn out he went off in the very final part of this at the end of this morning's practice. No such problems in qualifying. This is looking good again. He is going to surprise a few of the top 10 people.
Whoa! No, he's not.
He is not.
He's going to surprise himself. Well, they're new to motorsport in Turkey. They're applauding as Schumacher spins. They thought that was spectacular and they enjoyed it. And I think anybody who doesn't like Ferrari will also be applauding that. But that's not the right attitude, because Michael Schumacher was on a good lap. And it's such a shame that he binned it there in the way that he did. Here's Fisichella then. He's looking pretty happy with his engineer Alan Permain on the left and Flavio Briatore on the right. Here's what went wrong.
Let's see if we can see what went wrong, because it was just odd. The back end just stepped away. He's turned in normally, look, and wow, just breaks away from him. Just so little mechanical grip at the rear of the car as the speed and downforce just bled away. And look, perfectly online, no lock brakes. Bosh, out goes the rear end of the car. And that's two Schumacher brothers who had big incidents in the same corner, who are going to be like, where did that come from? Ted, what can you tell us?
And Michael has come straight back into the pit lane. But remember, of course, the Bridgestones are also the harder choice. Ferrari have had to take the harder Bridgestone, so that explains some of that. But Kimi Raikkonen absolutely pumped up. He legged it coming out the pits and put in a hard outlap to try and get some heat into these tyres.
Yeah, he's got to get this on pole now. The two Renaults on the front row of the grid. Montoya in the sister McLaren is a remarkable third. And Raikkonen knows he needs a good lap. He can get this car in the 1 minute 26s. He's got to put it on the edge, but he cannot afford to make a mistake in turns 8 or 9. And they are coming up real soon.
Michael Schumacher, Jenson Button, Jacques Villeneuve, Ralf Schumacher, big names, all made mistakes here this afternoon. Kimi Raikkonen runs very wide. He runs perilously wide, but he gets away with it. What brave driving from Raikkonen. He is really on it here, intent on putting some space between himself and the rest of the field. We've got two Renaults at the top of the tree at the moment. Fisichella leads Alonso. Montoya, teammate to Raikkonen, is third at the moment. And this is Raikkonen making monkeys of the lot of them. 4/10 faster now.
Yeah, it's looking good for pole. Just those three little 60-mile-an-hour corners. As long as he doesn't attack the curbs too hard, it's relatively easy for him. Alonso made a slight mistake in air. Fisichella was quick. Raikkonen is quick too. He's going to go on pole. Surely he'll be in the 126s, and it is a 126.7. Not too bad a news for Alonso. He's third on the grid, the grippier side right behind him. Fisichella on the front row. That's why he's being applauded.
Short shift and go to yellow switch G7. Yellow switch G7. Just remember you're on air, Kimi, you're on air. I want you to remember that there is no car behind you. There is no car behind, and save fuel, save fuel. You are on pole position. Well done.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Well, the first ever qualifying session for the Turkish Grand Prix, and did it throw up some great surprises, but this is the man of the moment. I think everyone expected him to get the pole position. He went out there, but Gary, it wasn't that easy. He had to put the lap in. Everyone was having problems before him. He had to go in there and put it, and he really showed his authority.
Yeah, that was a great lap from Kimi Raikkonen, and it just shows you he's handling the pressure better than anybody else at the moment. I think we saw how difficult it was for everybody to keep the car on the track. He went out there, not only kept it on the track, but put the best lap of the day in.
Awesome, but you've got to compliment Juan Pablo Montoya. Went out fourth in the session and lands up fourth in the grid. I mean, so the McLaren is just super.
I think it's very important that he's there. It's fantastic for the championship that we got the two leading constructors in the first four places on the grid, and very well done for Giancarlo Fisichella. But I think Montoya's got to support Raikkonen as Fisichella's got to support Alonso. And the question is, does Renault let Fisichella go and harass Kimi Raikkonen, or does he let Alonso pass as quickly as possible?
Well, there it is. We've spoken about this at length. You can see underneath, you can see the line that is formed on this racetrack. That is the racing line. The dirty side of the track, Gary, you've seen, is really gripless. So Fisichella and Montoya do have the problem, but Alonso, we know the Renault's quick off the line, we know the McLaren's off the line. Hopefully tomorrow we're going to see an Alonso-Raikkonen straight fight.
No, I think we are going to see something like that tomorrow, and we've got a good chance of Alonso leapfrogging Raikkonen, we don't know, but nevertheless it's going to be a fantastic fight, and this is a fight for the championship, and both these contenders up right up front there.
Brilliant stuff. Both of the McLarens, the Williams in the top 10 as well. Great to see for them. And then if we go down the sheets, Rubens Barrichello, the best of the Bridgestone runners, 2.5 seconds off the pace. And then the likes of Jenson Button, unfortunately, he was so close to putting in. We really thought he was going to challenge for that pole.
Well, he started off reasonably well. He had a very good first part of the lap, and then unfortunately turn 8, which a lot of drivers are saying is a fantastic corner. And it looked like the car was just too low. It bottomed out, lost a bit of downforce, and he had initially he had a slight moment going in, held it, and then on the way out of the corner he made a big error and went off, same like his teammate Takuma Sato, which you got to say just a bit odd with BR's systems that Takuma Sato really held up Mark in his qualifying lap, and also Jenson Button was a bit slow on his in lap, but a bit of a shame for BR. The car looks very fast, looks hooked up. Let's just see what happens in the race.
Going to be very, very compromised. I mean, Jenson Button, Gary, was 1/100th of a second slower than Raikkonen in Sector 1. So, I mean, he could have really gone for this pole position.
Yeah, I think he was on track certainly for a big challenge there. But, you've got to keep it on the road. You've got to get it. Sure. Got to get the lap done. And but the frustrating thing is now that they can't go and adjust their strategy for the race tomorrow. Now he's got to go and race with what he has. And, really, it's severely compromised the whole race.
We're looking at the guy, Jacques Villeneuve, had a huge spin, also messed up his tyres quite badly, so he's going to be in a difficult position. Then we got the Takuma Sato making the big mistake, Ralf Schumacher making a mistake, yet he did finish his lap. And then Michael Schumacher on course for, I think, would have been a really good qualifying considering the problems that Ferrari have had this whole weekend. But, just showing that the car just does not manage to grip on that track.
Well, I don't think that it's we can say that it's just the car, but I think that the circuit is such a challenging circuit for all the drivers. I can't remember when last we've seen so many people make so many mistakes. Normally it's just one driver going off wide. I think here we've seen a good 6 or 7 cars having problems. So at least we've seen a circuit now that's throwing up a challenge to Formula One drivers. It's not a sterile, boring circuit. And what you got to really admire about this man on screen, Kimi Raikkonen, was that the two drivers before him had spins, went off. He got into the car, the pressure was really on him. Renault were on the front row at that stage, and he did the business. And I wouldn't be surprised if his Sector 3 was just a conservative banker to make sure he didn't miss any apexes and miss his braking points, because Sector 1 and Sector 2 were superb.
Fantastic from the Finnish driver Kimi Raikkonen, waiting for the press conference. They should be making their way up in this magnificent facility. I think a lot of very, very happy fans ready for Gary. I mean, I think this is what we want to see. We've got the two McLarens, the two Renaults. The McLaren seems to be the quicker car. We understand that, but in race condition tomorrow it could be all different.
Yeah, it could be all different, and Renault's been reliable as well. So they've got that on their side. But the Renault's been extremely fast at some of the races as well. It's not that he's just won the races all on good luck. The car has been quick.
Sure.
So this is, I think, going to be a good fight. We're going to see how the tyres develop over the race tomorrow, and just looking at qualifying, seeing how many people went off just here. I think we're going to be in for one very interesting race, and I think we're going to see a lot of action on and off the track tomorrow.
It's going to be something you definitely don't want to miss. Don't forget, tomorrow in studio together with Gary and Vic. I unfortunately will not be here. Leanne Paulik will be in. But in the studio tomorrow we've got the two Steinmetz diamond helmets of Juan Pablo Montoya and poleman for the Turkish Grand Prix, Kimi Raikkonen. Those were the helmets they used at the Monaco Grand Prix with the diamonds in them, valued at £200,000 each. They're going to be here in the studio, so have fun, guys.
We'll definitely enjoy having using them and having a sort of situation with them, but the issue is in terms of this particular race. I think the real issue comes down now as to who has reliability towards the end. Who looks after the tyres? What tyres did Renault have? What tyres did McLaren have? And what is the reliability issues? It's great that we got through all the practice sessions with the top 4 runners still intact, and now we come to the really big issues is in terms of reliability. Renault have been this is the last race with this engine. They have been worried about the engines, as we heard Fernando Alonso did say in free practice 4 that he would only do 2 laps towards the end. As we go to the driver interviews.
The fastest 3 qualifiers for the first Turkish Grand Prix. Third quickest for Mile 7 Renault, Fernando Alonso. Second also for Mile 7 Renault, Giancarlo Fisichella. And on the pole for the 5th time this year for Team McLaren Mercedes, Kimi Raikkonen. Kimi, a great looking lap. Those 2 Renault drivers to beat out there. Track conditions changing all the time.
Yeah, it was good. I think so in the last sector I lost a little bit time. Braking after the long straight, I got a little bit the rear end loose, so it wasn't perfect, but I knew that I have some time in my hand, so I was not too worried.
Your thoughts on this circuit from a driving point of view?
It's quite nice, really, for the new circuits, because it's not one of the normal ones. What is on very flat circuit. It has up and down hills and all sorts of corners, and I think so. The most challenging corner is corner 8. It seems to be quite difficult to go through very quickly and not getting out of the shape, really. So I quite enjoy.
Well, it was a very confident-looking pole position. Does the car feel as competitive here as it does everywhere else?
Yeah, I think so. Yesterday was not perfect, but really, yesterday was really only tried to find the right tire, and I think so. We did a good job on that. And this morning, over the night, we changed the car, and straight away from the morning, it was good. And we did a good lap time before the qualifying, so we were quite confident. But then on new circuits, you never know really how it's going to be in qualifying, because it's quite dusty. So I'm very happy with the car and how the thing's gone.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
Giancarlo, congratulations to you too. First time we've had 2 Renault drivers in the top 3 in qualifying since Malaysia. We heard some radio transmission to you just before the start of your lap talking about the condition of the wind. The wind had changed. Did that help you at all?
Yes, a bit. Yeah, it was a very strong wind on the start-finish line, and quite a lot of tall wind at the end of the back straight, and especially in the braking point was really difficult. But it's been a clean lap. I was a little bit conservative on the first and the second part, but on the last sector did very well. As considering even Barrichello was very close, was good, and it's very encouraging for tomorrow. Looking forward. I wanna go for the podium. I like the target is to win the race.
And your thoughts too on the circuit design? Yeah,
I agree with Kimi. It's a nice circuit. Already when I walk around on Thursday morning, was really nice, and especially the first few laps were very excited. So it's great. I'm happy to be here, and hope to have a great weekend even tomorrow.
Congratulations to you. Fernando, a good-looking lap as well. Giancarlo slightly quicker, as he said, in the third sector there.
Yeah, I think I was a little bit surprised about the wind in the back straight, so I missed a little bit the apex in 10-12. And maybe I lost half a tenth or something like that, which is enough to be second. But I'm happy to be third. It's the clean side of the grid, so we should have a better start, and hopefully we can go through the first corner, not like Hungary with no any more than us. So I think we have to finish tomorrow, and we are in a perfect position to do a good result.
Your championship rival, of course, Kimi, on the pole. Talk a little bit about this dilemma between going for the win, going to be aggressive, and also, of course, scoring points.
Yeah, it's not easy to manage, but at the moment we are thinking to beat McLaren and to beat Kimi, because I think it's the only way to be right in the championship. And I think we can do it sometimes, sometimes not. And the times we cannot do it, we have to think and we have to score points. And I think tomorrow we have a good chance. We have the 2 Renaults in the top 3, which means that the car is competitive here. So let's try tomorrow.
Well done too. Kimi, just finally going back to you, a long, hot race tomorrow, anti-clockwise, and a very fast corner there, putting a lot of G through the car and, of course, through the necks of the drivers.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy, definitely. Also because we had some holiday, and always when you not driving for a while, it's more harder. But I don't mind. We see how it goes, and it shouldn't be any problem.
Let's hope so. Now we can have some words from you in your own language, starting with Kimi.